Hey there, got a really interesting video for you guys today. This one is a sort of combination video, but it's about how to use your nursery greenhouse in the wintertime. A lot of times that space can go unused, and so I have some footage here from two different farmers in two different areas that use their greenhouses in different ways. And partly it's, for different reasons, but mainly it's to increase production in a time where there isn't production in that space. So the first one is with Pam Dawling of Twin Oaks Community in Virginia, and the second one will be with Dave Henderson of Red's Quality Acres in Durham, North Carolina. Hopefully this gives you some ideas of some interesting stuff you guys could be doing in your greenhouses over the winter time. Hope you enjoy. Is this a nursery? What do you guys call this?
We call it the greenhouse, and it's where we start the seedlings off in the spring. But during the winter, we're growing lettuce in here. And so we have a system where we screen compost outside into wheelbarrows, and then we set up a rather precarious set of boards across the tops of the beds, and we push the full wheelbarrows across the boards and tip the compost in and fill the beds up. So they're 2 cinder blocks high. We fill those up with the screened compost, and then we plant lettuces in October, and then we harvest from those during the winter, and then middle of January, when we're going to start our seedlings, we will pull out some lettuces and shovel out that compost, and we use it for our seed compost. We don't buy in any starter compost. We just use pure homemade compost.
And what's the reasoning for that? Is that the starter compost you use for starts does it need less fertility, so you can use it on the second round, or?
Oh, there's plenty of fertility left in it. We use it for our bigger transplants as well. We just, what's the reason for it? I don't know. Self-reliance. Okay. We don't have to buy in anything. And this process, it turns out that this process of having it in here over the winter all ready to use is so much better than having a big frozen bag or pile or something outside. And also, by the time the lettuces have grown, the compost has really mellowed out. There's a lot of earthworms in there that have hatched out, and it grows really good plants. And so that's our reason these days for doing it, is because it works so well.
Okay, so do you think that part of it is that the soil biology is pretty active for that?
Yeah, we keep it active, alive all winter, and so I think it really helps fend off any diseases, and it provides the nutrients for the seedlings.
Okay, so once these crops get taken out at the end of the winter, basically, and you're starting your seeds in here, is this become sort of just full of transplants that
it
are
does
going to go
become
up?
full of transplants.
Okay.
Yeah. As we need the space, we harvest out the lettuce, and we put like wooden bars across and rest the flats of seedlings on top of the bars, and we start with the ones nearest the south windows, and then as we need to, we fill up the whole space with flats of transplants, and it gets very congested in here.
Always does. You never have enough room.
Right,
but I think that's a great use of space, because your sort of greenhouse nursery is not really getting used much in the wintertime.
Right.
So this way you can definitely be growing some edible food in here and really using the space as much as possible.
Yeah.
So does that timing work out pretty well? When this stuff's done, you're getting the starts ready for the spring?
Yeah. I mean, if we need to choose, we choose the space for the starts and harvest out the lettuce. We can always eat some more lettuce. You can get, just like half a dozen lettuce makes the space for another flat. So we just harvest the lettuce as we need the space, and then eat the lettuce.
Okay, and this is a pretty simple setup. We just have cinder blocks, right?
Yeah, they're just cinder blocks. Yeah, it's a solid concrete floor. The original use of the space was to grow herb plants for market, but that idea didn't last for very long, and so now we use it like this.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about this greenhouse too?
Yeah, I mean, it was here when I got here. It's got a masonry north wall, and the south side and the roof have old patio doors. You can get them from companies that are fitting new ones. You can get the old ones, and they're kind of clouded, so they're not so good for houses anymore, but they work okay for greenhouse use.
And this is enough space for doing your transplants like in the spring and summer?
Just about. I mean, it's always bursting to the gills, but yeah. And we've got the cold frames out there that we move the flats out to harden off.
Do you do any heating in here?
We used not to do any at all, but now the winters are sometimes colder. We keep an electric heater set on 45. It's a small heater. It's not really capable of warming the space to 45, but it does stop it freezing. We make sure it doesn't freeze.
Dave, you got some really cool stuff going on in your greenhouse here. This is mainly like a nursery for starts, but in the in the fall and winter, I mean, you're not really growing starts, and so it's like you got a lot of space here to work with. So talk about what's going on over here.
Yeah, so the reason this all came up is because I just started seeing a time of year where we still needed to keep some amount of space in here for seedlings, but we didn't need the whole tunnel for seedlings. So we started in about the beginning of June, turning some of the tables over and filling these bags and planting basil and tomatoes in these bags, which especially for the basil we found to be the best method that we've found for growing basil. We ran into no mildews, no major issues, which has always been a problem for us in growing basil in this region, just as humid as it is here. So the mixture is mostly compost, which we buy in. It's the same compost we apply to the fields, and we did incorporate a little bit of peat moss into it, but it was a pretty small ratio with peat moss and a poultry manure fertilizer a little bit in there as well with the compost.
Kind of just basically creating a potting mix.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Potting mix. And then we did basil and tomatoes in here, and then we re-amended a little bit after that crop came out with a little bit of the fertilizer and a little bit more compost, no more peat moss, and then we planted the kale into that.
Okay, so these had tomatoes in them during the summer months.
Yeah.
Okay, and then when did it get switched over to doing kale?
And then it got switched over to doing kale at the beginning of October.
Okay, so you don't need that much volume for transplants going out, like, at that point. You can convert some of these, flip them over.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, we buy in... So through the fall, we don't have as many transplants as we do in the spring, because for the fall crop, we buy in all of our main fall brassicas, all of our kale, collards, broccoli, that kind of thing. We've just found that it's better to buy those in from a professional. Cool.
So let's talk about some more specifics here.
Yeah. So I bought these bags from Growers Supply that are really cheap. It's the cheapest container option, which is why I went with these. I also thought it would be nice because once we're done with them, you can just kind of like fold them up, put them in a box somewhere, rather than having a bunch of plastic pots you need to put somewhere. And we are running drip tape over top of them, which has worked out pretty well. It's a little bit weird because the holes in the drip tape don't line up perfectly. So that's why I'm actually running 2 lines of drip tape, because basically there's going to at least be one emitter on each bag if you're running 2 lines. And I've got it set up on a timer so I can kind of manage the irrigation with timers. And we planted this in October, like at the very beginning of October, and we will start harvesting it probably mid-December, which is about when our greens from the field will be done for the year. And again, it's not a huge volume, but it is just a way for us to use the space that we need to heat anyways for our seedlings.
And so when you guys are done with the winter growing, where does this soil go, or compost mix?
So yeah, this compost that's from here, we're just going to incorporate into the field like we would with our regular compost amendment.
Cool. So really no waste here, and just utilizing space that would be going to waste, being heated too.
Yeah, exactly.
And so this is the first winter growing the kale in here, is that what you said?
Yeah, because this is actually our first year of really needing to produce transplants through the winter, because we've added some tunnels this year and have taken on a few more accounts for the winter. And so, we're needing to plant every few weeks throughout the winter, and which means we need to have transplants through the winter as well.
Okay, and these tables are just, are they like 4x8 roughly?
Yeah, 4x8. They're made from 2x4s with just mesh wire on top.
Cool. Super simple, man. And it looks like it holds it together really well and just keeps the bags like from falling over the place too.
In line. Yeah, that has worked out.
Cool. Super dual purpose, like multi-use. Awesome stuff, man.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.